Hello and welcome to The Quest on Rajya Sabha TV. I'm Rakhee Bakshee and this is the special edition of The Quest we are bringing to you right from Jammu and Kashmir. We are in Srinagar and as the show aims to do, it brings to you a deep insight into the life, career and vision of a leading personality. And that leading personality this time is sitting in front of me in Srinagar. He is the Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister, Mr. Omar Abdullah. How does it feel to be the Chief Minister after some years?
It's been, how do I put it? It's been a humbling experience to be given an opportunity to serve the people of this state in capacity as Chief Minister, to be given now 4.5 years and to try and steer this state through what is obviously a transition as we move more and more towards a post-conflict situation. It's been challenging, but it's also been very rewarding.
Are you at home now here in Jammu and Kashmir?
I've always been at home here. And Jammu and Kashmir is my home.
Because when you came, there were these questions.
There have always been questions. There will always be questions. I can't change my background. I can't change the fact that my mother is British and my father is Kashmiri. I can't change the fact that I did part of my schooling in Himachal Pradesh, or I went to college in Bombay. People who have lived all their lives in the United States of America proudly call themselves Kashmiris, and nobody questions that. Yet here I am, who's lived most of my life in Kashmir, yet still I'm asked if I'm at home. Yes, I'm at home, and that's the way it is.
Your childhood was unique. Would you like to describe some of those days or moments, how you felt?
Well, I don't think it was unique. It was different. I think it was different, one, because I grew up in a very peaceful Kashmir. My generation remembers what it is like to grow up in a Kashmir that was at peace with itself. We were at peace within ourselves. We were at peace with our neighborhood. I mean, the sort of crime that today worries parents was not a problem for us. So roads weren't as crowded, and therefore if I took my cycle and went out up Gupkar Road all the way to the Palace Hotel and back, my parents wouldn't worry. Today, I don't think there is a parent who can say that here, much less in any other part of the country. So yes, childhood was a little different. It's also a fact that I'm from a political family. At one point or the other in my childhood, either my grandfather or my father was Chief Minister.
Exactly. So your grandfather first, a towering figure here in the state. What influences he had on you?
I only saw him as a grandfather. I did not really see him as a political figure. I didn't see him as the towering personality that he was. He was first and foremost a grandfather to me. So he was the person who we went and spent the evenings with. He was the person who we went to.
He was not the Sheikh Abdullah.
No, he was obviously Sheikh Abdullah. But I mean, I can't disconnect the grandfather from the political figure. So for me, he was the person who we went to on Eid to collect a little bit of money, things like that.
Very
but then
nice.
it was also, he was also the person in whose motorcade I used to love to travel. I used to like to sit in his pilot jeep, and I used to like to ask the guy if I could press the siren. So little things like that, which I guess most children wouldn't have been able to do.
And you still pursued sometimes biking, which you like.
I do. That's, I guess, what keeps one normal.
Your father, he's been here Chief Minister. In fact, I was here those days. And one watches him and you, and the personalities are a little different. And you know what I mean. He's a little more maybe vocal about things, expressive. When you became the Chief Minister, he sang a song, Papa Kehte. And he's somebody who really is very vibrant and one would even say a little flamboyant in his nature. You're a little quieter, one would say.
In that respect, am more like my mother. I'm not very outgoing. I'm more reserved. That's who I am. And
so what do you consult him on? I mean, how is this?
I consult him on everything. There is hardly a subject that we don't talk about, whether it's politics, whether it's everyday life, whatever it is.
You know, you took over as somebody very powerful in the party and finally the president, but a party which actually always looked to somebody elder and more mature maybe, and to accept that person was young and within that party was handling things politically, though you were the son of Mr. Farooq Abdullah. Do you think you had problems kind of handling that kind of?
I didn't have problems. I've always received a lot of cooperation from my colleagues. It didn't help matters that we lost an election soon after I took over as party president.
How was that defeat like?
Well, no defeat is easy. With that having been said, nothing teaches you a lesson like adversity. I've always believed that the period I learnt most from in my life was the 6 years that we spent in opposition. They were invaluable in my growth as a person, and it's something that I actually look back and appreciate. I think it also gave me a chance to get to know my colleagues better and for them to get to know me better. And I don't think there is any sort of murmur anywhere about problems in terms of working, because we've been able to straddle the generational difference. I mean, I have colleagues who have worked with my grandfather, who are ministerial colleagues of mine. At the same time, I also have youngsters who are roughly around my age group or even younger than me, who I'm working with, and it works well.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, subsequently, though you had a corporate career in the beginning, but later we saw you as a Minister of State in the NDA government and 2 important portfolios that you held. How was that period like?
It was interesting. You can't compare being a Minister of State in the government of India to being Chief Minister, and that too Chief Minister of a state like Jammu and Kashmir. There is no comparison. So as much as I'd like to say that yes, being a minister in the government of India was a great learning experience for this, it's not. There is hardly anything I learnt as a Minister of State that is being put to use. It's a completely different world. And plus, I think it would take a really incompetent person to fail as a Minister of State in the government of India. It's a very easy job to do most of the time.
You know, the entire world looked at you, your famous speech in Parliament where you said, I'm a Muslim, but I'm also an Indian, was really a hit. How was your experience like?
In what way?
I mean, you know, it was a very charged speech that you gave.
Well, there's a long story behind it, which I've repeated ad nauseum. But basically that speech was born out of a sense of anger about the way in which Parliament was functioning. I mean, please understand, there were a large number of people who were trying to project that nuclear deal as anti-Muslim. And given that my party had decided to vote in favor of that, I needed to explain our point of view so that it didn't backfire here in Kashmir. But you saw the sort of ruckus that was being created there. So really those words were born out of that. There was so much I wanted to say, wasn't being given the opportunity, and then when I got the chance, I just let loose.
How was the Parliament experience like?
Parliament was a very rewarding experience. What can you say about Parliament of the single largest democracy in the world? You come across, a whole cross-section of people's issues, and you get to use an opportunity for greater good.
Yeah, so there's so much that we would like to talk to Omar Abdullah about. We are doing that after this very short break. Do stay tuned for the Quest. Welcome back to the Quest, and we are talking to Mr. Omar Abdullah, who is the Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir. Talking about educated youth, you've shown some concern about educated youth joining militancy, and that's the key actually, because that's something which is really a matter.
I think it's important to put everything into context. Yes, in the recent encounters, we've seen slightly higher educated youngsters who have been a part of militancy. But while it's something we need to look at, I don't think it's something we need to be unduly concerned about at the moment. There have been instances in the past also where reasonably qualified people have looked towards militancy. Now, what were the causes behind this? Is there something that is happening in either the Avantipur University or Kashmir University that has led to this? We need to have a look at, and we'll assess the reasons and go forward from there.
So what's being done for the youth here in the state actually?
In what way?
To promote them, maybe give them direction, give them more employment, employment is a major issue here. So what is being done?
Well, there are multiple tracks that we are working on. Obviously, there is still the desire amongst people to work for the government, and we are trying to fast track government recruitment. We hope to be able to fill about 70,000 government jobs over the next year to 2 years, which is a challenge, but we hope that we're up to that challenge. Other than government jobs, obviously we are trying to create an environment that is conducive for private sector employment. the biggest traditional private sector employment in the state other than agriculture has been tourism. Clearly, with the sort of tourist numbers that we are seeing last year and this year, there is scope for earning, which we are trying to promote. Handicrafts and handlooms are traditional areas. What has happened is that the younger generation has moved away from there. We are trying to incentivize sort of handicrafts and handloom. And then we have an entrepreneurship development program. We have a very good entrepreneurship development institute on the outskirts of Srinagar. We have, over the last couple of years, developed thousands of young entrepreneurs who have been given seed capital from the state government. We have organized bank financing for them. We are trying to handhold them so that the units survive. We are taking small steps towards the direction.
Especially because when you are a young chief minister, when you took over, you were the youngest actually. So there are a lot of aspirations, and there are a lot of expectations from you because of being young and modern in your ideas. So how do you really you are coping up with that and trying to deliver?
Well, one does the best that one can. I think it's perhaps reasonable to expect that nobody can live up to all the expectations that are placed on their shoulders. I knew right from the get-go that it would be impossible to realize every single aspiration and every single expectation. And therefore, one does the best that one can within one's own limitations. And you leave the rest to the people to decide whether it was good enough.
Talking about Kashmir and talking about peace, do you think things are getting better or things are fine here now?
Well, I wouldn't go so far as to say things are absolutely fine, because we are still dealing with the remnants of militancy. That having been said, every year is a better year than the previous year in terms of any sort of figure or statistic you want to look at. Of militant-related violence or militant-related activity.
But infiltration seems to be right now recently on the rise, actually.
What does?
Infiltration.
No, not at all. Not at all. In fact, if you were to look at figures, this year's infiltration is lower than last year's. Now that the passes have opened up and the snows have melted, we'll have to keep an eye on things. But as of now, there is nothing to suggest that we are facing a sort of a fresh onslaught of infiltration.
You know, when we talk about Kashmir, there's this quest for peace here in Kashmir. And when we talk about this quest for peace, we have to talk about this dialogue with the neighboring country. Where do you think it's moving forward, especially after the election, Mr. Nawaz Sharif coming in as the Prime Minister there in Pakistan?
As of now, it's not moving anywhere. Let's face it, as of now, dialogue between Pakistan and India has pretty much been in cold storage. Possibly on account of the fact that there really wasn't a government in Pakistan that we could talk to. There was so much confusion on the ground there, knowing that we were expecting an election in which perhaps the PPP would not be returned to power. It's but natural that very little progress was made. Now some clarity has emerged. You have Nawaz Sharif in power on his own steam. He's made, I think, all the right noises about improving relations with India. He wants to restart his 1998-99 peace process, and I believe we should give him a chance.
But do you think we are getting too hopeful or ambitious about what he'll do?
I think we're very reasonable in terms of what to expect. I don't think anyone is getting carried away. I haven't seen any voices to suggest that we expect an overnight resolution to all our problems, nor will there be an overnight resolution. What we need to do is to keep chipping away and to keep talking to each other. And I believe that in Nawaz Sharif we have an opportunity, and we should take advantage of that.
What about confidence building measures in terms of, we always say that trade is one area which we can really work on in terms of, exchange of activities in those areas.
Are you talking specific to Kashmir or India-Pakistan?
India-Pakistan, of course.
Well, certainly India-Pakistan, a lot has been done on the trade front, a lot more can be done. We would be looking towards Pakistan to give most favored nation status to India. I think that is something that is long pending and has been mired in sort of domestic Pakistani political compulsions. But definitely for Nawaz Sharif to perhaps solidify his intentions, I think this would be a good starting point. That we sign on the dotted line and he awards India most favored nation status.
You're talking about Kashmir here and development. I mean, water, power, these are the things that people actually aspire for. I mean, the daily life itself, again, is a quest. So how are you looking at this development?
I think that in itself, if you look at it in some ways, is a success of this government. No longer are people worried about whether they will survive the day. No longer are they worried about the possibility of an encounter or crossfire or a crackdown or things like that. The fact that people today can focus on day-to-day concerns, can focus on their requirement for water, electricity, education, roads, I think is a huge plus point, because those of you who have followed Jammu and Kashmir during the dark ages will remember that this was something people never talked about. Nobody had the space to talk about day concerns, because the only thing that concerned them was the security situation. Today we have moved miles away from there.
And do you think Delhi is really listening wisely and sensibly?
I believe Delhi listens. I believe Delhi listens. I believe there are times, unfortunately, when they don't listen as much as we would like them to. But they need to be reminded every once in a while, which I do.
Which you keep doing whenever you go.
I keep doing that.
So we are talking to Mr. Omar Abdullah. We are taking another short break, but do stay tuned to The Quest. We are coming back shortly. So you are watching The Quest and we are talking to Mr. Omar Abdullah. It's a very engaging conversation. There are lots to talk about as far as this Armed Forces Special Power Act is concerned. Do you really think, and there is hope, that this phased withdrawal statement by HM actually can be workable, and you're
I hope so. There is no denying that one of the strongest supporters of this phased withdrawal of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act was Mr. Chidambaram when he was in the Home Ministry. I am now working with Mr. Shinde, and I'm hopeful that he will also be as supportive of this.
But some clarity was needed as to why earlier the demand was not made, and now it is,
As in?
Not in writing and this and that. I mean, that's what we just.
No, there is. I think this was.
Okay.
I think it was a little disingenuous to suggest that there has been no formal request from the state government, because I think that is in some ways misleading Parliament. The fact that there is no DO letter from the Chief Minister doesn't mean that no formal request has been made. Requests have been made at every Chief Minister's internal security conference. If you pull out my speeches, you will find it in the record there. If you pull out the records, the minutes of the Unified Command meetings, it will be there. Meetings at which the Union Home Minister and Union Defence Minister were present, it was there. Conversations I've had with the Prime Minister and with members of the Cabinet Committee on Security, I have raised the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. Now, if the fact that there is no DO letter allows you to tell Parliament that there is no formal request, then as I said, I think this is a little disingenuous, and to my mind, it's actually misleading Parliament.
So, but you think that the centre and the state, as I was asking earlier, are in unison actually on many occasions?
On most issues, yes. On the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, if we were in complete unison, we would have started the process of withdrawal. Clearly, there is some difference in the perception of the state government and the perception of the Defence Ministry, which needs to be resolved.
And recently you were there, and NCTC is being talked about. What are your views?
We have our reservations about NCTC. We have our reservations particularly on the powers to launch operations, which we believe can be very, very dangerous. We've seen for ourselves operations even within the state that the army has unilaterally launched without even taking the state police on board. The possibility of collateral damage is very high. And this is in spite of the fact that the army is present here and are more in tune to the local sort of situation than a force coming from outside. The same situation, if you were to have a force of crack commandos, let's say deployed in Delhi, and they suddenly land up in Kashmir and launch an operation on behalf of the NCTC without taking the state into confidence, I believe that is a recipe for disaster. Aside from the fact that it infringes on the whole federal structure of the country, operationally, I have serious reservations about this, and we've made those reservations known to the government.
You also said something about interlocutors' report. I mean, that how it should be taken ahead.
It needs to be.
It needs to be taken ahead, you feel strongly. Talking about political issues now, in Delhi, there are these talks going on, and with the recent developments in BJP as well. And all the regional parties and some of the tall leaders are in talk amongst each other. Do you think this third front alternative which is being talked about, and which regional parties will have a stake, is something, an idea which could shape up? And you think
we've had experiments with third fronts in the past, but any third front that emerges in India will emerge as a post-poll alliance. It will not be a pre-poll alliance. It will be born out of necessity, not out of choice. and that will emerge only
Because
once.
your party is an important ingredient of any alliance in terms of...
We are a part of the UPA, and we expect to remain a part of the UPA. We are not looking at third front or third party alliances at the moment. That having been said, as I mentioned, what sort of scenario emerges will emerge after the elections. If for some reason neither the Congress nor the BJP get a large enough number of seats for them to head a government.
When you say you're an important ally of the UPA...
no, I didn't say important. I just said we're an ally.
Okay.
How important we are is for the UPA to decide.
Okay, that's a valid point you're making here. Mr. Omar Abdullah and Mr. Rahul Gandhi, now the Vice President there in the party, you're supposed to be having good equations. And why I'm saying that is that both are young and both individuals have ideas which create a lot of hope. So how does this equation actually take ahead, let's say, ideas for a better society?
I think the reason my relationship with Rahul has been able to evolve the way it has is that we by and large keep politics out of it. It's much easier and far less messy. So yes, I'm an ally of the Congress, and therefore there are political issues that come up once in a while, but it is very rare that Rahul and I actually sit down and talk politics, which I'm actually quite happy with.
Okay, talking about coalition politics as such, and this polity which is emerging in India, how do you think that it's going to stay, and it is something that...
For the foreseeable future, I don't see any alternative. I don't see a situation emerging where a single party will rule India for the foreseeable future. I mean, please understand, the last time that happened was '84 on the back of Mrs. Indira Gandhi's assassination when Rajiv Gandhi won a majority. That has not been repeated since then. And I don't see a situation emerging after that. I mean, look, if you want to do a direct comparison, I mean, Rajiv Gandhi won an overwhelming majority on the back of Mrs. Indira Gandhi's assassination. The Congress did not win an overwhelming majority on the back of even Rajiv Gandhi's assassination. Possibly, I think coalition politics, at least for the foreseeable future, is here to stay, and not just at the center, even various states today. It's rare now to find a government that is able to govern even a state as a single party government.
As you yourself said that heading this government here has been a challenge. So how do you want to take it ahead? I mean, this challenge in terms of giving more hopes to the people here. What would you like to say?
Well, I think we still have a year and a half within which to try and act on some of the commitments that we've made. I believe, I think our primary focus must remain on consolidating this peace that has emerged out of all the troubles and trials that the state has gone through. And so long as things remain peaceful in the state, I'm sure we'll be able to focus on other relevant issues like electricity, water, development, job creation, because all those are priorities.
Mr. Abdullah, who are watching this interview within Kashmir and outside, would be looking at you as to what you're going to tell them, and any message that you would like to put across?
It's, I mean, how do you reduce sort of aspirations or goals for this state to one sentence or two? I mean, it's like reducing the aim of your government to one single tweet. It's not possible. And therefore, I think the only thing one can tell the people is to have faith, and that we've done the best that we can over the last 4.5 years, and we continue to improve on that.
Much has been done as far as development is concerned. We've talked about it, but any further schemes, something that is being worked on in terms of infrastructure here?
I believe the one area that requires focused attention is electricity. I believe the state has enormous potential, but we're not realizing that potential, partly on account of absence of generation, partly on account of a poor transmission and distribution system. That will continue to receive focused attention over the next 1.5 years or so.
And corruption is a major issue all around. How do you really plan to tackle that?
Well, the thing with corruption is that the government can create the via media to reduce corruption, but ultimately that via media has to be put to the test. Now, I can create a vigilance organization, I can create an accountability commission, I can provide you with a Public Service Guarantee Act or a Citizens Charter, I can create or provide you with the right to information, but ultimately you have to use those. And we have created all the via media necessary to reduce corruption. I only hope that the citizens of the state start putting it to use.
And finally, as you're wrapping up, what's the dream or what's the road that you would, Mr. Omar Abdullah, would like to walk on?
What's the road? A road that leads to the ultimate resolution of all the issues of Jammu and Kashmir.
So for all your confidence, all the best, Mr. Omar Abdullah, and thank you for talking to us. That was Mr. Omar Abdullah, Chief Minister of J&K, talking to us. I hope you like this special edition of The Quest. We are presenting to you from Srinagar, Jammu and Kashmir. Thanks for watching and bye.